with Julia and Philip Siracusa, sponsored by Carnation, airing live on the United Public Radio Network on 105.3 FM in New Orleans. This show's entrance has been edited, produced, and directed by Gwen from Perfect Trust Productions, LLC. You can find us at perfecttrustproductions.com.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Monday night segment of Horsefly Chronicles Radio with myself, Julia Siracusa, and Phil Siracusa. We are broadcasting live from the International Public Radio and the United Paranormal Radio Network on 105.3 FM from New Orleans. This evening's show is fully sponsored by Carnation, so we want to thank them for their sponsorship. You'll have to do a few things in order to participate. Go on over to the YouTube channel, UFO Paranormal Radio, or International Public Radio. You can also go into all of the Facebook stations, UFO Paranormal Radio Network, UFO Undercover with Joe Montaldo, News on the Flip Side, Twitch, SoundCloud, and Podbeam. And if you have any questions for our guests, please ask. So tonight, guys, we have another amazing guest. And tonight we're going to talk about trauma and how it really affects us. So please let's welcome Michelle Carpenter to the show. Michelle has a gift of seeing into the person's body, mind, and spirit. She can sense when a person's heart contracts when it feels sadness or pain, and expands when their vibration shifts. She is shown where feelings are held within the body and the mind. She'll discuss tonight how to release grief and trauma from our bodies, and how trauma can affect us, including our past lives, and how that plays a part in releasing trauma. She'll also talk about how she channels angelic beings of light called Council of Eight. So please let's welcome her to the show.
Welcome.
Thank you, Julia and Philip. It's lovely to be a part of your show. Thank you.
Awesome. We love the accent.
Yes.
Hey, really quick, Carpenter. Any relationship to the Carpenters?
No, funny story. My husband and I are busy painting our lounge, and the other day I had some 60s and 70s tunes going on, and the Carpenters were playing in the background. And I said, "Oh, this is the Carpenters." He's like, "Huh? Who they?" And I'm like, "Come on, dude, get with the program." How have you not heard about the Carpenters after all these years? I mean, she was just beautiful and iconic. I mean, she got the most beautiful voice,
Oh, most definitely.
Yeah. But
Second
no
to none.
relation.
Her voice was second to none.
So, Michelle, can you take us to the beginning of your story? What drove you down this amazing road of studying and learning how to sense trauma in people?
Through my own life experience, through my own upbringing, through learning as I've gone along. And I don't know how much you would like me to share. Would you like me to start at basically my own trauma that I've gone through?
Whatever you feel comfortable sharing.
Well, I'm very open, I am very open to share my story, because in my hope and what I've been shown just in the years that I've been working on myself is that the more I share with somebody else or other people, who knows that may help them in their experience or their trauma that they're going through in their own lives. And so I'm kind of very open in sharing, so that's why I always just like to ask, because, even when I was sexually abused at the age of 5, I didn't know that it was sexual abuse at the time. It was my uncle. He was going through puberty, but it was quite graphic. I've come to discover over the years of, having to go into therapy and that, in terms of what he did to me. So that's why I just like to ask, in terms of, sexual abuse is different for many different people. But yeah, that's where I pretty much started was, many years ago, my folks lived in Zimbabwe, and which used to be called Rhodesia. And my dad was part of the Rhodesian War, and my folks were young. They got married at a very young age, had my oldest brother. And when we had the President Mugabe take over, it became quite intense to live there. And my folks pretty much just gave away almost all of their belongings. And I remember, my mom and I think my dad went to South Africa first, but we then joined as a family, joined a few months later on a train with a few boxes in South Africa. And like I say, as time has gone on, I've realized even that experience, those experiences of my dad being in the Rhodesian, a soldier in the Rhodesian War, going backwards and forwards, I picked up on a lot of my mom's fear. My mom used to, lock myself and my oldest brother in the bedroom, and just out of her own fear of what might happen. Fast forward, so I was sexually abused in Zimbabwe, didn't know it was an issue or a thing or a problem, and because I was told to keep it a secret, obviously. And when we then moved to South Africa, my folks, in the 70s, there was a lot of partying, and with the partying, there was a lot of drinking that came with that. And I've come to again experience over time that there was a suppression of their own feelings in their own childhood, and what my dad was experiencing, what my mom had experienced in her lifetime. But that affected me as a little girl. I'm the middle child, and I remember a lot, like even talking about being in the bedroom with my mom and sleeping in the room. My oldest brother is 3.5 years older. I said, "Do you remember that memory?" And he's like, No, I don't. But just to share with you guys how when we start going deeper into our own psyche, and I've actually shared an experience when my mom was alive and I went back to South Africa a few years ago. I said to her, "Mom, I remember you." My mom was very angry as a woman, and she projected a lot of that anger onto myself and my oldest brother. And I said to her, "Mom, I remember there was a time where," and I explained the sideboard, and I explained the dining room, and I explained the plates that she was throwing at my dad. And she's like, "Michelle, that's impossible. How do you remember that?" And I said, "I remember it. Like, I remember the maroon plates and you were throwing them at Dad." And she goes, "No, I was 7 months pregnant with you. How do you remember that?" So, when I've gone into hypnosis sessions or gone into deep regression again, or gone into feeling into my body throughout, it's been about 14 or 15 years that I started working on myself. And kind of at times I feel like I'm back to basics. I'm like, damn it, there's the old story might come up, but there's still a feeling that's embedded within my body. But my mom was blown away. I was blown away that I even remembered that being in her womb. But that's how we take on the intergenerational trauma. So fast forward to being in South Africa, growing up in what I would say a volatile situation. My parents did the very best they could, but we didn't have a lot of money at times, and also having to just leave everything behind in Zimbabwe, getting to South Africa, took them years to get onto their feet financially again. One situation was we moved into a small mining town, and there was a girl at school that called me a poor white, and I stuck with that anger for years and years and years, because we were in a mining home. They were all face bricks, so you knew who was, the parents who were miners. But that memory was traumatic for me, because it was clearly embarrassing that I was known as a poor white by this one specific girl. And every time I saw her at school, I was just angry. So for me, I just suppressed. I used to have a lot of tonsillitis, a lot of ear infections, a lot of bronchitis. So my body kept flaring up because I never spoke up, number one, from the sexual abuse. I then had bulimia as a young girl. I was a dancer, and I somehow got it wrong. I always chuckle when I share this story, because I ate too much and I didn't vomit enough because I was putting on weight. My ballet teacher called my mom in and said, "Something's going on with Michelle." But I never shared things with my mother. We, again, grew up in the 70s and 80s, and we weren't taught to share things, to share experiences. We just got on with life, basically. At the age of 16 and a half, I had a very, very good friend who I'd grown up with since I'd immigrated to South Africa. And she had what was called spina bifida, and she'd had a kidney transplant at the age of, I think it was 15 and a half, 16, and the kidney didn't take, so she died. And that was a very integral part of my journey, which I've come to experience, because she had passed over in hospice in Johannesburg. And I remember sitting a few days before she passed over, and her parents were being counseled. And I remember them coming out of the room with the counselor. I remember looking at the woman thinking, how is that counselor not crying? Like, wow, this is phenomenal, And fast forward into my journey, when I was 32, 33 years old, I became a part-time hospice caregiver, and I learned so much from that experience. But I was being guided. Now that I know that I'm, in this learning of my soul's journey, when I was 16 and a half, that was part of what I needed to learn in order to, fast forward a few years later, 20 odd years later, to becoming a part-time hospice caregiver. But again, I just suppressed that, I remember going to school the day she died. It was just crazy. I got the phone call from her mom and dad, and my mom said, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yep." And just in a state of complete numbness. And I think that that's how I lived most of my life, in the state of numbness, even though my body kept showing me through, the different illnesses, but also bladder infections, kidney infections. And what I forgot to mention was my dad, bless his cotton socks, but he'd had a few affairs when he was younger. And that was a lot of my mom's anger. So my mom had conditioned me, do not let a man dominate you. Well, guess what? That's all I ever did, was let men dominate me and control me, because I just wanted to be loved. I just wanted to be loved. And with the affairs that he had, I had sort of figured out that this was a pattern in my life. I would bring men into my space when I was, in my 18s, 19s, 20s, and they would all cheat on me. And obviously the whole time I kept going, what the hell is wrong with me? What am I doing wrong in this world? Again, just all lower vibrational feelings. I then got to the age of 24, and I knocked over and killed a young girl. I was a sales rep at the time, and I was driving. I was on my side of the road, but I looked down to put a straw into a cool drink, and she had misjudged my car, and I just heard this impact, and she had hit my mirror, my window, rolled over, and she went into what we would call the bushes, like it's the veld in South Africa, but it's long overgrown grass. And I stopped, and I just saw my car full of smoke, and I was in a territory area where there were farms. So I thought maybe it was a horse or a dog or a cow, and some other people had stopped, and I said, "I don't know what I've hit." And they went and had a look, and they said, "You've hit a woman." But it turned out that there was wrong information on the accident report. And the mother actually phoned me a few months later, and she said, "I'm phoning to find out how you are, because you knocked over and killed my daughter." And I said, "What do you mean?" I was told, again, I don't know why at the time, but I thought that I was told she was a woman in her 50s or 60s, and that's how somehow made it feel okay, even though I had knocked over and killed somebody. But taking a life with a young girl was just a complete devastation for me, to know she was a young 14-year-old. But her mother was an earth angel to actually pick up the phone and find out how I was. But again, I just suppressed it. I went on to a party scenario, and I went on holiday, and just got on with life. And in my experience, that would have been a massive wake up to myself. That would have been like a, come on, Michelle, you need to get out of your funk in some way. And I've come to realize over, working with different shamans and just experiencing different things on my journey, in my elevated consciousness, that these would have been wake up calls. But I grew up in a Christian home, so what I do now to my parents would be, being a medium would be, I'd be speaking to the devil kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And so again, I just sucked up all those feelings, but my nervous system was out of whack completely. I suffered from migraines. I was just continuously sick. I then, within 8 months, got married to my now ex-husband, and another pattern, he cheated on me. But it was the best wake-up call, because we had a baby girl who was 10 months old, and it took me quite a while to find out that he'd actually cheated on me. And my mom saw all the signs. She was like, I know this man, 2 cell phones, kind of stereotypical. I mean, he did it the real typical way, which is quite funny. And but he did the best thing ever for me on my journey, because that was when I always used to describe to people, I felt like a pit bull had grabbed me by my Achilles tendon to bring me down, because my family was of the highest value in my life. And I thought, shit, something's got to change, man. Something's got to change with me. And I went to go see a clairvoyant, and he was a young male. And he said to me, "You don't love yourself." And I was like, what the hell? Just help me with my anger, dude. Like, I've got anger issues. Like, what's wrong with me? I just kept going back to this old way of thinking, like, and just being completely programmed, and there was always something wrong with me. And that led me onto the journey of then going to do a weekend away with hospice. And then I went on to become a counselor for them, a part-time caregiver and counselor. And then I studied neuro-linguistic programming, and then I've just advanced. But every time I've advanced, just to give an example, like when I was studying neuro-linguistic programming, which was over a period of a year, on and off over weekends, man, there were times where I would just cry and sob my heart out in a group of 18 people. And the coach who'd been coaching people for 18 odd years didn't know what to do with me. And he would try every technique. And I just feel it was like a way of my body just releasing and releasing and releasing all this pent up, stored feelings and emotions that I had just cried for years, crying inside, but not able to voice it because, you know, again, every time I cried, I remember one of my parents saying, "Stop crying. Why are you crying?" Or I'd get smacked for something that I did that was perhaps thought that was incorrect, or, you know, so there was just so many different levels and layers to my own trauma. And then add to that, in the last 20 odd years, I mean, we've lived in New Zealand now for 6 years, but prior to that, I would say 15 years before immigrating to New Zealand, we've been in some very severe situations. My dad and daughter got held up at gunpoint. We'd had people invade our home in the middle of the night. My husband screamed so loud, he lost his voice box for 3 weeks. That PTSD is still running through our systems at times. My husband and I still have a few nightmares every now and again. Like me, not so much, but he still has at least once a week. He's got some real deep emotional trauma there that he's busy working on at the moment. But we've had quite a few situations, you know, and it's unfortunate. It's just part of that, you know, the massive fear that we lived in, that state of fight, flight, fright. You know, you're always on. And it's a beautiful country, but, you know, there was just, my body just got to a stage where I just couldn't handle it anymore. Like, you know, you kind of like climb in your car and the bag's underneath the seat and the windows are up and locked, and you just become neurotic, you know, you're always checking. And it's not a way to live. And then my husband went on a mountain biking trip. And sorry, guys, I'm just rambling on, so please stop me at any time.
That's amazing. So far, I mean, this is an incredible story.
I mean,
you've been through a lot.
I have. And, you know, I used to underplay it. I used to be like, no, you know, it's just, this happens to everybody else. And I actually shared, I did a live event about a month ago here in New Zealand, and I shared my story. And when I shared the fact that I'd knocked over and killed this young girl, so many people's jaws dropped. And I remember thinking in that moment, like, whoa, Michelle, this is a big story. You know, this is like my life's journey has been amazing because it's got me to the place of really understanding. And I'm still working on understanding a lot of trauma and how we sit with it in our bodies. I can say quite categorically and open-heartedly that there's very few people's stories that my body sort of goes, whoa, this is big, you know. And I know we all have big journeys and big stories in our own specific ways. But I, you know, for a long time, I lived in my victimhood. Why? Why did this happen to me? Why do men leave me? Why did this happen? Why was I sexually abused? Well, when I started counseling, the universe gave me exactly what I needed to help me to heal, which was young woman who was sexually abused. And I still realized how much anger I carried towards my uncle, because he was very much a part of our lives. And I shared this with my parents only at the age of 33. You know, I'd really stored it for such a long time, and he was just such a part of our lives. And I just, you know, have you heard that expression when somebody just has a vibe? Well, I was that person at every gathering. I just had this vibe. I was just on. I just had this hatred inside of me, and that wasn't serving me in any way. And so as I've learned throughout the years to work on myself, you know, I've started experiencing how our bodies store the old deep-seated feelings of anger, resentment, which is just me drinking the poison. I wanted to be a better person. I wanted to Part of my sexual abuse was being angry at him, but then being angry at my parents. That was another level. But then the biggest thing was being angry at myself. And, at the age of 5, I was so super critical, like I should have known better. And I was 5. And only when my daughter turned 5 did I sort of look, and it brought up a whole set of anger again when I realized I was so little when it actually happened. And my parents weren't as empathetic as what I'd hoped for them to be at the time. I was coming from my own place of perspective of, if anybody had done that to my children, I would have annihilated them. In all honesty, I would have taken them out, man. I would have been like, I say that respectfully, but that's my thought process. I'm like, what could I do, man? Like, I'm just like, oh, I'm on. But obviously within limits, I don't want to go to prison because of something that happened to my kids. But that's the anger that I was carrying. It was so deep-seated.
I want to ask you this question really quick.
Sure.
Do you think, from your knowledge and wisdom and everything you've been through to this point in your life, that everything was supposed to play out the way it did? And I ask that because, I interview a lot of people, and it's as if each one of us has our own story, our own puzzle. And even though there's a lot of obstacles and things that we don't like, and we say, well, why would I want that to happen? As if you pre-planned, we wrote out things that we want to experience. And I know some things we don't want to say that we would want to experience, but in the paranormal, the supernatural, and the psyche of a person, I've interviewed so many people from around the world, and it comes to a correlation of, we formatted this in such a way that at the end of our journeys, we see the whole puzzle that's complete, and we understand more of who we really are, not the flesh of who we are.
Sure. So in short, yes. When I was in my victimhood, I 100% didn't understand it. I kept asking the big question, why is this happening to me? Why am I failing at relationships? Why am I, a loser? Why didn't I feel loved by my parents? The why is just such a big question. And sometimes we don't know why. Why do children come in with the disabilities they do? Why do parents experience such loss? Why did I have that soul contract? It's part of my evolution. It's part of my growth. And the more I become expansive in my knowing, the more I realize that there isn't even a why. It just is.
Just is.
It just is. And it's made me really, really good at what I do. And like I say, for me, there's been times where I know that I'm on my own. For me, I'm always on my own healing journey, and I'm learning. I had a situation over the weekend where I projected onto my daughter, and it just brought up such old shame for me. And I'm very much about keeping it real as the therapist that I am, because I'm freaking human and I'm still learning, and so it's wonderful. I'm really good at the bridge between the human and the spiritual, because I go into my humanness, but I also know that there's more out there in the spiritual vastness of who we are within our light. And that's what I've had to learn over time, is that, because I used to sit in my emotions and like really just be like, like life's so freaking awful, and why is this happening to me? And, even if you notice my body, like, this is how I used to be. And then I'd blame my parents. Part of that change and part of the healing in my sexual abuse was then being angry at my mother and my father, because they didn't nourish me or nurture me in the way that I'd hoped that they would have. But I'm coming from my place of perspective as the mother that I am. And I've kind of been OTT with my kids because of the way that my parents were with me. Whereas now my kids are learning and teaching me, like, Mom, just stop kissing me, And I'm like, okay, I'm a bit smothering at times, but I've taught them, find your voice, tell me what you like and what you don't like. The parts that you like about me, take on. What you don't like about me, change. So that's, again, is it's kind of like we're here, and then I'm here, and when I'm out here and I'm channeling, whoa, that's an amazing place to be. At the same time, I've chosen this journey of being Michelle. And,
I can say that you have an amazing energy, the way you
Mm-hmm.
speak, your tonality, you're very fluent and you're high energetic, which is awesome. And you got an upper vibration that's really incredible. And it kind of reminds me of your story. Again, there's a lot of turning points to your life. I mean, you've been through a lot. And then I was just reading an article that this young girl, she remembered her past life and she died in a plane crash in the 1930s. And she says, I know who I was, and she gave the name of who she was and everything, and she says, because I planned it that way. And they said, what do you mean you planned it that way? She goes, well, I planned my past life that way. I wanted to experience that. And again, it sounds like it's so bizarre, it's out there, it's outlandish, it is, but yet from all these testimonials around the world, people say that, in the reincarnation state, the soul wants to experience different things on different levels. And that we're so boxed in and narrowed in the physical realm that unless you have the third eye or you see above and beyond everything, or you go through a near-death experience like a periscope and you see life for what it really is, right? And you narrow it into not understanding why and how could that happen and all the hurtful things that we're only human and we don't like it. I get it. None of us do. Sure. But after hearing so many testimonials of what people go through, especially reincarnation, it's as if the soul comes in soul groups. They write down what they want to experience. There is free will. It can be changed, but they go through the course of what the soul has in store for them. That's already pre-planned, and it's over and over. I hear the same exact stories, and I find it fascinating. And those that have crossed over and that went into coma states, they come out and they say, no, I get it now. I lost my kids in a car accident. And they go, aren't you devastated? He goes, yeah, but now I see where they went. And where they went is amazing to this other place, this upper realm, for example. Life isn't perfect. Life is very hard. And some people, it seems like all the goodness and the wealth and success is thrown their way, and other people struggle from day one and don't make it that far in the lifespan.
Yeah.
But then when you hear all the stories, some of the wealthy people that had a near-death experience, when they come out of it, they give everything away because they say that that's not what this was about. I had it all wrong. So a life journey, I believe, they always say that you can be the poorest man on earth, but the richest man in soul. And I'd rather be the richest man in soul.
And that's a beautiful way of saying it. Two things that struck out to me when you were saying that and the way you described that is, I think so many of us actually, I was one of those people. I was walking around in a coma state. Most certainly, it's I wasn't put into a coma, but I was just so unaware and oblivious to life. And my parents, my mom specifically, we grew up in a Methodist home, but then my mom became a reborn Christian, or I think I did first, I can't remember. I mean, it's just so crazy. This is one of the coma states that I used to live in. We used to go into one of the center places in Joburg when it was still a really safe space to go into in the 1980s, 1990s, and stand outside one of the most amazing clubs, at 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night and trying to save people, like coming with our Bibles. I mean, who the hell does that? It's like, really? People are coming out and they're drunk and they just want to freaking go for chicken, because they want to stuff their faces. And yeah, we are like, praise the Lord. And I'm like, who does that? I was a teenager at the time. Those are the leaders of the church. That's just ridiculous, now that I can laugh about it now, but I was just living in this haze.
Yeah.
And my experiences had to be big wake-up calls. And you would have thought, the day that I was driving and, had this collision, knocked over this young girl, you would have thought that was a wake-up call. I didn't. I just put my head down. I sucked it up. Nobody said to me, Michelle, you need to go for counseling. This is massive in your life. I remember crying in one of my we went on holiday like 2 days later. So the drive from Johannesburg to Cape Town is a 12-hour drive. And we were going in my company car, and they all said, like, my friends were like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "I'm going to drive, man." Like, that's the Trojan that I can be at times. But it wasn't healthy, because we went down. I got drunk almost every single night. I just suppressed it. And I cried one night in my friend's arms, like I just sobbed and sobbed and sobbed, and she just held me. But 2 months later, I was engaged, and 8 months, all in all, I was married. Looking for this fairy tale life, and that he's going to rescue me. Well, my ex-husband didn't even know what to do with my sexual abuse story. Every time I was hoping that I was sharing it with somebody, that was a friend or a new person, you could see people's eyes like,
yeah,
I don't know what to do with this, man, and I was just like, well, this is what happened to me, kind of thing. But I spoke from my head. I didn't speak from my heart. I was so disconnected, walking around in that coma space and state. And so the wake-up call absolutely was when, I got divorced, and that's where I just started to grow. And then I wanted more, and I was like, yo, I want to shift the shit, man. I want to be a better person for myself. I used to make it about my daughter, which wasn't healthy. I came to realize I want to be a better mother, which is nothing wrong with that. But I kept saying, I want to be better for Gabs. And it's like, be better for you, Michelle, and as my journey sort of evolved, and even as something as simple as going for a massage. So if I may share openly as to one of the things that my uncles did was he made me give him a blowjob. Now there's memory within the jaw. And I went for a massage once, and the tears were just rolling down my face. And this was about 5 years ago. And the massage therapist was so precise. And she's like, Michelle, she was in my jaw. She's like, you're holding on to deep-seated anger in your jaw. But I could feel my jaw moving as the emotions and the energy was flowing through me, if that makes any sense. Because the emotions were just coming through my tears. But I could actually feel my jaw, and I was just connecting with my little 5-year-old self. I just kept saying to him, okay, I forgive you. And that's where I started when I was, on my hospice journey. The facilitator that I met that weekend started counseling me, and she had been sexually abused as a young woman. So she really could help me on my journey. And that's when I realized the spirit or the soul that I am, people were coming into my space at the right time to help me to heal my tender heart. But that's how I realized how deeply embedded stuff is. Yes. And it's never for me in anybody's journey of trauma. Not one modality is the right way or the wrong way. People want to excel there. Like for me, I was trying to do everything all at once. And then eventually I just went, okay, Michelle, you just keep putting yourself into fight or flight. So just back off, take time to process, like after a hypnosis session.
PTSD. It's PTSD. How did you really recover from all this trauma and PTSD? Because that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Like, what did you do to really, was it through a lot of counseling? And like, how did you become the person that you are today after all of this?
I'm still becoming the person that I like, okay? I just want to be clear with that. But it's been through a lot of different trainings, a lot of different therapies. So I started with counseling. Talk therapy was a lot of that. And a lot of my releasing, I call them golden tears, because I allowed my vulnerability. I started to allow my light to be seen. And then I studied NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. Again, as I shared with you, a lot of crying, through that, and a lot of inner child work. I then went and studied to become a hatha yoga teacher. I then went on a channeling course. I've done integrative quantum medicine. That's where I started learning about the past lives and, where I've been and who I've been involved with in past lives and who my soul groups have been. And I continuously, I do hypnosis, I do regression, and I do a lot of energy exchanges with people that I feel into, and I feel that I ask my guides, is this something that'll be good for my healing? And I've become very aware as to, even if I go for a massage, I always ask, please bring somebody into my space, because for somebody who's just massaging on 100 people a week, for me, that's not really being, I need somebody that really is helping me through the experience of releasing whatever my body needs to release, because I go in with that intention in any kind of modality or any kind of therapy that I put myself into. Reiki also being one of them. I have to sort of say to somebody who might say to me, Michelle, is it okay if, I'm training for my Reiki, would you be okay if I work on you? And I'll say to them, please be aware, I just allow. Like, if I need to scream, if I need to roar, if I need to cry, because there might be something that comes up in the ethers that's my mom's stuff or my grandmother's stuff or my dad's stuff, their trauma that they've held on to. I just get shown when I'm in the field. And then my way of expression is through just allowing my tears. And then I quiver. Nice. I also did, I'm trying to think of the modality right now. There's a gentleman in the States that developed it for Vietnam vets, where, if you watch a lion get away from a buck quivers and they regulate their nervous systems. We're not taught that. As little people, we hold, we store, and trauma release, TRE, that's right. And this gentleman developed it for Vietnam vets, and it really helped my body a lot. If I go into any kind of movement or dancing, and then I lie still, I really listen to my body. Sometimes I sit, like, even talking about my story, even though I've spoken about it a few times on different podcasts, I can still feel like, oh, I've got to work on that, or I can feel into my heart. I'm like, oh, there's a memory there, there's emotion, there's a feeling. I don't judge it. I used to be so self-critical at times, like, damn it, how come I didn't get that right? Or, Michelle, you didn't get, and I'm just stop,
What do you do when you come across someone who has been through this type of trauma? Like, how do you help other people?
So I work in the now. I work very presently with somebody, and I will always say to them that I basically, because I'm in your field, I energetically feel in my body what my client is sitting opposite me with. So as soon as I connect with them, I could feel if their body's in fight or flight, if they're in the sympathetic or the parasympathetic, because my body starts to just start to quiver. And I can feel where the energy starts to move when they share their story with me. And I can feel when their heart contracts into sadness. And I'm very gentle, especially when somebody's been through a lot of trauma, and I continuously, let's say for example, if somebody is sitting and they're starting to share their trauma with me, and they're starting to share their story, and Michelle, I'm so traumatized, and I'll just say, okay, and can we just connect? Let's just take a few breaths, and for somebody who's spent years and years and years in fight or flight, and they've got no awareness that they're even in that state of being, it's about the connection. And I'm constantly just navigating. I'm constantly just, okay, whoa, there's the heart. Just breathe. So I use a lot of breath work on my Zoom sessions. If I have a client who's sitting here in my rooms or on my bed, that's where I help their body. I'll go and feel, and I'll say, okay, again, just breathe. And I always will say, breathe into your heart, expand into your heart. And when we use breath work, sometimes, a lot of times when the trauma is being released, people will start to feel dizzy, or they'll start to feel nauseous. And that's where I'll just put my hand. I'm a very touchy-feely person. And I know that's what kid doesn't want to be held, to be honest. What kid doesn't want to be just told in the moment, it's okay, I've got you. So when a client has a big release, even on Zoom, I would say to them and suggest, pull a pillow, or grab a blanket, something that's soft, because ultimately we're working with that little person inside. And, the subconscious feelings or programmings that they're holding on to. And, but breath work, and I use music, and then I get guided, take them back to when they're 3. And then I'm shown a visual of when they were 2 or 3 years old. I had a client yesterday as an example that I kept being shown she was talking and talking and talking, and there's something going on in the dynamics of her marriage. And I kept being shown, I've got to take her back to when she was in the womb.
Wow.
And then I said, can we just, it was kind of like, let's just calm your body down, get you into the parasympathetic. And when I see people go, then the state of body is starting to, because it's trust. I'm a stranger in their lives, and I do share some of my own personal journey, because I feel like it just helps them feel a little bit more comfortable, that I'm not just the person that's sitting here going, hey man, I've got my shit together, because I don't. I'll sort of share, like, the biggest thing I'm learning, even with PTSD for myself, is you can never say to anybody, I understand exactly what you've been through, Julia. I understand exactly what you've been through, Philip. Nobody understands.
Yes.
I can say to you, I'm walking with you on your journey. I'm feeling with you. I'm in this moment right now. But none of us understand what the other person is being through. The understanding is here. The brain wants to interpret what it wants to interpret. The brain wants to go, and I'm realizing through my own journey, even when a friend says, oh, Mish, I understand what it's like to be South African. I'm like, no, you don't, dude. Like, but that's me being triggered. So that's when I go, oh, okay, I'm being triggered. I need to work on this, because it's my trigger, it's my feeling. So I'm very much just navigating in the space of helping people to go from their contractedness within their body to helping them to feel lighter in their heart and in their body overall, because that's when we can start to expand our awareness. And when we start to let go,
that. Yeah.
Yes. I've got friends who are just, they're out there, man, and they've had by their interpretation of being human, they seemingly have had an easy journey, and they're just out there. But sometimes, and I say this respectfully, there's a superficial spiritual bypassing that can happen at times. This is the season I'm in. This is how I'm navigating life, and I'm like, sorry, it's very judgmental, but it's like, come on, okay, I hear you, but you sound like you've listened to so many other people telling you that this is a season they're in, but where's the feeling? Get into the feeling, because the body just stores, it holds. And sorry, Julia.
You have to let yourself feel, because if you don't, it's just going to get worse and worse and worse.
That's my experience, is that I didn't know how to feel. And I brought in one heck of a teacher with this mentor and facilitator when I started my journey 15 years ago, because she had a big life journey herself. And she got me to feel all kinds of different emotions. Then eventually got me into a place of acceptance, not only in my own journey, but in my soul's journey. My true knowingness is to learn forgiveness in this lifetime, and to learn more about loving myself and loving others. That for me is what I keep going back to: forgiveness, letting go of the shame, of the experience of sometimes what comes out of my mouth, because my defense mechanism is my mouth. I was incredibly sarcastic as a teenager, incredibly angry as a teenager, because of this wound that I stored. And a lot of my self-sabotaging, I was sexually abused, and then not even, I don't know the timelines, but my big right toe got caught in a bicycle chain when I was 5.5, 6 years old. And I'd had a piece of skin that they said I was young enough to attach it. And thank goodness, because being the dancer that I became over years, grateful that I have 5 toes, on both, 10 toes on all my feet. But I realized that was a self-sabotaging pattern because I got attention from my parents being in hospital. So every time I got sick, I got my mother's attention.
Right.
Do you see how these noticings sort of happen?
Mhm.
Even with my husband, my second husband, as soon as I'd lose my shit like a banshee, he'd be there. He'd be like, "Oh, what do you need? How can I support
Yeah.
you?" And then no, I don't want to be this person anymore. So do you see how there's
Yes.
so much in our journey and the growth of the trauma spaces that we can be in, which is feelings. Feelings are rejection, anger, irritation, frustration, apathy, and as we start to let these go, we start to feel more joy, more bliss. And that's when the synchronicities happen, when our vibration and our frequency changes. So that's how I notice when I'm working with a client. They'll join me in a very low vibrational space because I'm feeling into their humanness, but I'm also feeling into the density of their vibration. And as we go through this session, afterwards, I can almost feel like a tingling, and they'll go, "Yes, my gosh, I feel so much lighter."
Mhm.
And that's what we can ask for, is that in every session that we feel a little bit lighter.
Yes.
What does that mean, feel lighter? Does that mean the skeletons and darkness are taken off for that person?
That's a great question. Yes and no. It depends what the skeletons look like. It depends what the darkness looks like to an individual. I had negative entities attached to me last week, and I kept thinking, I was painting our lounge and I was having such bad thoughts, man. And I felt I couldn't wake up that morning. And the next morning again, I'm not the easiest to get out of bed, but I was like, yo, man, I just feel so heavy. And then I took my dog for a walk, and I went and I did some cold therapy, some cold plunging in our local river. And then I asked for the guidance, what's going on with me? And I got very really, I had 3 negative entities, and I asked for a portal to be opened and Archangel Michael to come down. So I think we can bring it in, not even knowingly, because it just depends where you're at in your life. It depends on what you want to work on. It depends on your noticing, your awarenesses. Because again, for me, I can be out in the field, but I don't want to be an arsehole as a human being. I want to be a nice person. I want to be a kind person. I want to be a compassionate person. I can channel at any one time and say, "Yay, this is awesome. I'm in the gamma state. I'm out there in the field. Man, look what I'm seeing." I kind of like being on mushrooms, phenomenal.
Yeah.
At the same time, I'm still working on being an awesome human being to me and to everybody else. So does that answer your question, Philip?
Yeah, because I hear that a lot, where people say that after either an exorcism, a deliverance, or a blessing over them, when they've had a lot of trauma and negative feelings and bad thoughts of evilness, that they feel lighter. And I always ask, what does it mean to feel lighter? And they're talking about releasing the past. Because if you hold on to the past, you'll hold on to the demons and the skeletons and the darkness. If you release it and let it go out into the universe and you push it out, you become lighter and you become more vibrant and a higher energy. So I find that very interesting. And, for the listener out there, who doesn't go through dark times? There's a saying, it's crazy, that when everything in your life is going the right way, you run the devil's path. And you may say, well, what does that even mean? And then when you have obstacles in life, the devil is having a hard time getting into your life because you're making it over the obstacles. I think it's fascinating. I think that your life journey so far up to this day, and it sounds like you can help a lot of people, and you have, right?
Yes.
I have. I've been very, very blessed to work internationally over Zoom, and I'm incredibly blessed. I've worked with thousands of people over time. Sometimes the experience that I have with somebody is so big. You know, I used to take it quite personally, like how come people hadn't booked in, and 3 months or 6 months later, people would come back and say, Michelle, the information that you shared, the experience that I had was so big, it took me a while to process it. And I've taken that, I think, as a compliment.
Yeah.
But, you know, just to also answer your question when you were talking about that, Philip, pain in the physical body could be the skeletons that we hold on to.
Sure.
And I've noticed one of my biggest compliments is when somebody has this big, massive release of allowing themselves to just cry, to absolutely wail, you know, and because sometimes we just store it and store it and store it and store it and store it. And it's, the heart is going, just let me break free, you know, in that moment. And even I've got this big pillow, and I'll say to somebody, you've got to scream, man. There's a that's inside of you. And out of not helping them have embarrassment, even if I'm on Zoom, I'll say, you know, if you feel safe, like, I'll help them. Let's get it out your body. Or big breath in, feel, hold, think of the person that you can't stand or you're angry with, and then just release it. You know, and with kids, I use the Katy Perry song Raw. So there's different ways of expressing and getting it out. And sometimes that pain in the body can instantaneously, in those moments, just release. Because it's been holding in this vibrational space. And just by letting out a big roar or a big cry, a massive cry, afterwards people go, wow. So even that's the feeling of feeling lighter, you know, where they go, wow, it's just a sensation, actually, now that I think about it.
Well, Michelle, we are coming to the end of the show, and we want to really thank you for.
Oh yeah, this has been an awesome show. Very knowledgeable. Hey, tell people where they can find you and all that good stuff.
Thank you so much for having me, and it amazes me how quick time goes on, you know. And I sometimes go,
oh my gosh, definitely want to do a part two. We need to do a part two with you.
Yeah.
Thank you. So they can find me. I've got a YouTube channel called Michelle. Sorry, my kitten's just walked in. Michelle Carpenter Medium. I do channelings on there with the Council of Eight, and I have a free gathering coming up at the last Monday of every month, where we come together and bring open-hearted people together. And I'm on Instagram and I'm on Facebook as well, Michelle Carpenter Medium. And I'm just so grateful. Thank you for having me, guys.
Thank
you so much.
Thank you for everything that you're doing to help everyone else.
Yeah, most definitely. To the listener, please share this show. There's a lot of knowledge. If you really listen to the show thoroughly, and we all have that darkness, and it's a way to let it go.
Yes.
Julie, wrap it up.
All right. Well, special thank you to Michelle, of course, and special thank you to Carnation for sponsoring the show. And join us next week on 105.3 FM from New Orleans. And stay tuned for Trish Mel with the Missing Piece.
Thank you, everyone. Have a safe, great night, and we'll catch you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, guys. Bye.
Thank you.